Hello, and today we are going to get into our next lesson. We just got done adding and subtracting polynomials, and today we are going to work on multiplying with polynomials. So you need your notebook with you today, and we are going to be starting on page 555. And here are our objectives for today. That hopefully you'll be able to multiply a polynomial by a monomial, and then we'll be able to multiply binomials together by the time we are done today. So I want you to start by looking at example 1 on page 555. And this is another example of something we've already done. When we want to multiply a monomial by something, that is something with one term multiplied by something with multiple terms. It's just the distributive property. Everyone knows how to use the distributive property. We've done that many times. Right? So when we look at example 1, I really just want to take this negative 2x and I'm going to multiply it by 4x to the second, then I'm going to multiply it by 3x, and then I'm going to multiply it by 5. And you can see those steps right here, right? I'm multiplying negative 2x times 4x to the second. I'm multiplying negative 2x times 3x, and I'm also multiplying negative 2x times 5. So what do I get when I multiply 2x and 4x to the second? Negative 8x to the third. Right? I'm multiplying negative 2 and 4, and then I'm adding exponents. So x to the first and x to the second gave me x to the third. I'm going to multiply negative 2 and 3, and I have x to the first and x to the first, so I get x to the second. Sometimes it helps to think of this negative as being part of this 5 here, right? So I'm really multiplying negative 2 and negative 5. These two negatives are going to give me a positive, right? I get positive 10x. So there's my answer, right? Negative 8x to the third minus 6x to the second. And then the two negatives there made this plus 10x. So go ahead and write that on the line for example 1. We just did that one. Right, so if you're just multiplying a monomial and a polynomial, it's really the distributive property. Now what if we make it look a little more complicated? We want to simplify this expression. Well, we're really going to just think of this as kind of two separate problems, right? Here I'm going to use distributive property. I'm going to multiply that 3n by everything inside the parentheses. And then I'm going to multiply negative 2 by everything inside the parentheses. So I really want to think of that as two separate problems, right? I'll switch the colors here, right? Red and blue, two separate problems. So let's go back and look at the red problem. I'm going to multiply 3n by 6n to the third. And then I'm going to multiply 3n by negative 4n. And really, I want to think of this negative as being on the 4 here. Now, I'm going to go back and let's look at the blue one. I'm going to multiply negative 2 times 9n to the 4th and negative 2 times negative 11. So 3n times 6n to the third would be 18n to the 4th. 3 times 6, and then again, I'm adding exponents. Negative 3 times 4, I'm adding exponents. Negative 2 times 9 would be negative 18. And I have n to the 4th, and then negative 2 times negative 11 would be positive 22. Now notice in this expression, though, I have some like terms here. Right, I've got an n to the 4th power here and an n to the 4th power here. Let's put those two together, right? So they're going to combine the like terms, and when I do that, those actually cancel each other out, right? 18n to the 4th minus 18n to the 4th would be gone. My final answer just ends up being negative 12 n to the second plus 22. So today, you're going to use this to help you simplify some simple expressions, some that are a little bit more complicated like this one. And then ultimately, you want to be able to solve an equation with that. Again, we've solved equations, right? So you know how to solve equations. Before I try to solve the equation in part A, what do I want to do? Well, I would really like to get rid of the parentheses on this side of the equation. And how do I do that? I'm going to do that by doing what we just did in the last example. Right, I'm going to take everything and multiply in this set of parentheses by 2. I'm going to take everything in this set of parentheses, multiply it by 3. And that way I can end up with an equation with no parentheses in it that I'm going to then solve for p. So that's multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. Let's switch up to multiplying just binomials together. So now in your notebook, I want you to look at page 561. Let's go ahead and turn to page 561. Now when we say we're multiplying binomials, what we mean by that is we're going to multiply two things that both have two terms, right? A binomial times a binomial. And we're going to use some different methods to do that. We're going to use what's called the vertical method, which we're going to call it the box method. And then we're going to use what's called FOIL. So we're going to organize this box method a little bit different than what's in your notebook here. I think this might be a little bit easier for some of you. So you notice we have two binomials here. It's going to look kind of like a Punnett square in science. So either off to the side or in the margin of your notebook, I want you to take this first example underneath where it says learn on page 561. I want you to draw a box here. We're going to make it a 2 by 2 box. 2 by 2 because we are multiplying two binomials. Down the side, I want you to put the first binomial, x and minus 2. Across the top, I want you to write the second one, x and plus 6. Because we're multiplying a binomial times a binomial, this should be a 4-step problem. This box helps me organize those 4 steps. What is x times x? X to the second. Now I'm going to multiply again, row and column. So I'm going to multiply 6, right? 6 times x. That's going to go in this box. 6 times x is 6x. Again, I'm going to multiply row and column. So negative 2 times x would give me negative 2x. And then in the final box would be negative 2, and I'm multiplying the row and the column. Negative 2 times 6 would give me negative 12. This may not happen every single time, but a majority of the time what you'll notice is these two terms right here are going to be like terms, right? Notice they both have x to the first power in them. A lot of times you're going to be able to combine those two terms. So let's go ahead and combine those two terms and write my final answer. Upper left hand corner, I have x to the second. When I put together 6x and negative 2x, it's going to give me a 4x. Right? I combine my two x terms, and then I have a negative 12. There is the answer to that problem. Right? When I multiplied those two things together, what did I end up getting? I ended up getting x squared plus 4x minus 12. Now that's one method for doing that. One method is to use the box method, right? So we're just drawing a box. We're putting one binomial across the top, one down the side, and we're using the boxes to help us organize that information. Another method is something called the FOIL method, which is really just another way of using the distributive property. But again, the word FOIL helps us remember the 4 steps. The first step, the f, notice in our diagram here, the f is I'm multiplying the first term times the first term. That's really just distributive property, right? I'm multiplying x times 6. Then I'm going to multiply the outside terms, x times 6. So I multiplied x times x for the first terms, x times 6 for the outside terms. The I stands for inside terms. So now I'm going to go to the negative 2. I'll multiply negative 2 times x and then negative 2 times 6. I'm really just using the distributive property 2 times. This is just a way for me to remember those 4 steps. So let's actually use this method. Let's go to example 3. So here I want to use FOIL method to multiply these two. So again, think of it more like distributive property, right? I'm going to multiply 2a times 5. That's the first terms in both of those. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to multiply 2a times 3. So really, I think of that as the outside terms, the very front one and the very back one. Now I'm going to go back and redo the same two steps, but this time with negative 12. I'm going to multiply negative 12 times 5, and then negative 12 times 3. So we can see those steps right here. Right? I multiplied negative 2 times 5a right here, and that gave me, let's go back to red here, multiplied 2a times 5a, that gave me 10a to the second. I multiplied 2a times 3, that gave me 6a. Then I went back and I multiplied negative 12 times 5a, that gave me negative 60a. And then finally, negative 12 times 3, that gave me negative 36. And just like in the box method, you oftentimes will find that you have some like terms here. And when I look at this expression, I've got some like terms here. The 6a and the negative 60a are like terms. I can combine those to give me negative 54a. So in your notes, let's go ahead and fill in all the things that are missing here. And you can see we end up with a final answer of 10a to the second minus 54a minus 36. There's my answer. So let's look at a couple other examples here quick before we finish up. Go ahead and turn to page 565. Let's do a couple practice problems. We'll do one of each method. So let's say we want to do problem number 1. And let's use the FOIL method on problem number 1. So we're on page 565. And we're going to do problem number 1. And we're going to use the FOIL method to do that problem. So problem number 1, if you see it in the practice problems, is 3c minus 5 times c plus 3. So FOIL method means I'm going to multiply the first terms together. I'm going to multiply 3c times c. 3c times 1c is 3c to the second. I'm going to multiply the outside terms. So 3c times 3 would give me 9c. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same two steps here, but this time I'm going to do them with the next number. I'm going to do them with the negative 5. I'm going to multiply everything there in that second set of parentheses by negative 5. So negative 5 times c would be negative 5c. And then negative 5 times 3 would be negative 15. And here again, I've got two like terms right here that I can combine. So what do I end up with? 3c to the second plus 9 and negative 5 would give me plus 4c minus 15. There's the final answer for problem number 1. So let's try problem number 2. Okay, so let's do a different problem. And we're going to use a different method. So still on the same page, we're looking at problem number 2 this time. So problem number 2 is this: g plus 10 times 2g minus 5. I want to use the box method this time. So I'm going to draw a box here, 2 by 2 box. And I am going to, on one side of the box, put a g and a plus 10. Really doesn't matter which one you put where. And on the other side, I'm going to put a 2g and a minus 5. Again, I'm going to multiply row and column. So 2g times 1g would be 2g to the second. Negative 5 times g would be negative 5g. 2g times 10 would be 20g. And 10 times negative 5 would be negative 50. Now, before we go to write our answer, do we have any like terms here? When we look at this, notice on the diagonal is where we can find our like terms here. So there are a couple like terms right there.